You have been told for decades that the salt shaker is the enemy of your blood pressure. You have likely spent years eating bland, flavorless meals, carefully reading labels, and avoiding every grain of sodium, yet your top number remains stubbornly high, or perhaps it continues to creep up with every birthday. I am about to show you why the white crystal you should actually be worried about is likely not salt, but sugar, and how a specific biological mechanism in your kidneys causes your body to hold on to salt when you eat the wrong foods, regardless of how much you sprinkle on your dinner. There is a precise order to fixing this, and if you get the sequence wrong, you will struggle to see the numbers drop. I am Dr. Ben Harris, and today we are going to settle the debate between salt and sugar and give you the exact steps to relax your arteries, starting right now. Most people focus entirely on removing things from their diet, but they fail to look at what needs to be added to balance the system. I will show you the strongest protective mineral you are likely missing after you understand the setup. Let's begin immediately with number 1. The insulin connection. This is the most critical shift in thinking you will make regarding your cardiovascular health. For years, the standard medical advice has been laser-focused on sodium. The logic seems sound on the surface. Salt attracts water, water increases volume, and more volume in a confined space, your arteries, means higher pressure. However, recent studies and clinical observations are painting a different picture, specifically for older adults. The hidden driver that keeps your blood pressure elevated, even when you are on a low-salt diet, is often insulin. When you consume carbohydrates, specifically processed sugars, refined grains, or sweet drinks, your body releases insulin to manage the rise in blood sugar. Insulin is a hormone with many jobs, but one of its primary functions in the kidneys is to signal your body to retain sodium. This is the connection that is rarely explained in a standard 15-minute doctor's visit. High levels of insulin tell your kidneys to hold onto salt and water rather than flushing them out. This means that even if you are eating a low-salt diet, if your insulin is high because of bread, pasta, sweets, or even too much tropical fruit, your body is hoarding every milligram of sodium it can find. You are effectively creating a high-salt environment inside your body, driven entirely by sugar and starch. Let me share a story about a patient named Robert. Robert was 72 years old when he came to see me. He was a disciplined man, a retired engineer who paid attention to details. He was incredibly frustrated because he had done everything his cardiologist asked. He had cut salt completely. He stopped salting his eggs, he bought unsalted butter, and he avoided all canned soups. He told me that his food tasted like cardboard, but he was willing to do it to stay off a second blood pressure medication. Despite this extreme discipline, his morning blood pressure readings were consistently averaging around 155/95. He was terrified that he was genetically broken. He sat in the chair across from me, looking defeated, and said, "Dr. Harris, I don't understand. I am doing everything right, but my body isn't listening." We sat down and looked at his food log. While there was almost zero salt, there was a significant amount of heart-healthy grains. His breakfast was instant oatmeal with a little brown sugar and a glass of skim milk. His lunch was a sandwich on whole wheat bread. His snacks were pretzels or low-fat crackers. I explained to Robert that while these foods were low in fat and salt, they were spiking his insulin multiple times a day. His body was in a constant state of storage mode, locking the fluid into his blood vessels. We made a change. We did not focus on salt initially. Instead, we focused on stabilizing his blood sugar to lower his insulin levels. We swapped his oatmeal for eggs and spinach. We swapped his sandwich for a large salad with grilled chicken and olive oil. We removed the crackers and replaced them with a handful of walnuts. The change was not overnight, but it was steady. Within 3 weeks, Robert noticed his rings were loose on his fingers. This was the first sign that the water retention was leaving his body. By the 6th week, his top number had dropped by 15 points. He was eating more salt. He was actually seasoning his eggs again, but his pressure was lower because his kidneys were finally allowed to function properly. The mistake Robert made is the mistake millions of seniors make. They fear the salt shaker but ignore the toaster. The mechanism here is simple to understand. Insulin stiffens the endothelial lining of your blood vessels. The endothelium is the smooth inner wall of your arteries. When it is healthy, it is flexible and can widen when you need more blood flow. When you have chronically high insulin, that lining becomes inflamed and stiff. Think of it like a garden hose. A new hose is flexible and expands when the water is turned on. An old, sun-baked hose is hard and rigid. High insulin turns your arteries into that old hose. This is supported by a growing body of research. A review published in the Open Heart Journal suggested that added sugars may be more strongly related to high blood pressure than sodium is. The study highlighted that high fructose intake in particular increases heart rate and sodium retention. So, how do you apply this? You do not need to go on a strict extreme diet. You simply need to be aware of the beige foods on your plate. If a food is beige, bread, pasta, cereal, crackers, potatoes, it turns to sugar in your blood. Start by looking at your breakfast. This is the meal that sets the tone for your insulin levels for the rest of the day. If you start your day with sugar or starch, you are telling your kidneys to hold on to fluid all day long. Try to center your breakfast around protein and healthy fats. It is important to note here. If you are currently taking insulin or medication to lower your blood sugar, you must be careful when reducing carbohydrates, as your numbers can drop quickly. Always monitor your readings and talk to your doctor before making drastic changes to your diet. But for most people, simply reducing the hidden sugars is the most powerful first step. When you lower the insulin, the kidneys naturally release the excess water, and the pressure in the system goes down. It is a biological release valve that you control with your fork. Here is another simple habit to support this. Look at the beverages you consume. Many seniors drink sweetened iced tea, lemonade, or fruit juices thinking they are hydrating. These are pure liquid sugar delivery systems. Switching to water, perhaps with a slice of lemon or cucumber for flavor, removes a massive insulin trigger. This lowers your blood pressure not by forcing it down with a pill, but by removing the signal that was telling it to go up. It addresses the root cause rather than just the symptom. 2. The potassium balancer. Now that we have addressed the driver of retention, insulin, we must look at the mineral balance that allows your arteries to relax. This brings us to the second most important item on our list, potassium. There is a biological pump in every cell of your body, including the cells that line your blood vessels. It is called the sodium-potassium pump. This pump works like a battery. It maintains an electrical charge that allows your muscles to contract and relax. In our modern diet, this balance is completely broken. We consume huge amounts of sodium, mostly from processed foods, not the shaker, and very little potassium. When this ratio is off, your blood vessels cannot relax. They stay in a state of tension. Most seniors are terrified of salt, so they cut it out, but they rarely think about actively adding potassium. You can have low blood pressure with normal salt intake if your potassium intake is high enough. Potassium is the natural antidote to sodium. It signals the kidneys to excrete sodium and encourages the blood vessel walls to loosen. Let me introduce you to Elaine. Elaine was 68 years old and she was what I call a worrier. She was deeply concerned about her health and read every magazine article she could find. When she came to see me, she was not just hypertensive. She was also feeling constantly weak, fatigued, and occasionally dizzy. Elaine had put herself on a zero-salt diet. She was cooking everything from scratch, which is great, but she was using no seasoning at all. She was drinking distilled water. She was effectively flushing all the minerals out of her body. Her blood pressure was still hovering in the 140s, but she felt terrible. "I don't have the energy to play with my grandkids," she told me. "I feel like my legs are heavy, and I get lightheaded when I stand up too fast." Elaine was suffering from a lack of electrolytes, specifically potassium. By cutting salt so drastically without replacing the other minerals, she had created a situation where her blood volume was low, but her vessels were clamped tight because they lacked the mineral support to relax. We changed her approach. Instead of focusing on what to remove, we focused on what to add. I asked her to eat 1/2 of an avocado with her lunch. I asked her to add a cup of cooked spinach to her dinner. We added pumpkin seeds as a snack. These foods are potassium powerhouses. Within 2 weeks, Elaine's energy returned, the dizziness vanished, and amazingly, her blood pressure dropped by 8 points. She was eating better, feeling stronger, and her arteries were finally getting the signal to relax. This is a very common scenario. We fixate on the villain, salt, and forget the hero, potassium. Most adults over 60 need about 4,700 milligrams of potassium a day. Most are getting less than half of that. You cannot get this amount easily from a multivitamin. By law, over-the-counter potassium supplements are limited to very small doses, usually 99 milligrams, because too much concentrated potassium in a pill can be dangerous for the heart. You must get it from food. The best sources are not just bananas. In fact, bananas are quite high in sugar compared to other sources. Avocado is superior. One avocado has more potassium than a banana and healthy fats that support the brain. Leafy greens like spinach, Swiss chard, and beet greens are incredible sources. Potatoes are high in potassium, but they also spike blood sugar, so you must be careful with them. For the senior body, this balance is essential. As we age, our kidneys become less efficient. Helping them out by providing enough potassium ensures that they can filter blood properly. However, a very important safety note here. If you have advanced kidney disease or are on certain medications like ACE inhibitors or potassium-sparing diuretics, you must speak with your doctor before increasing potassium in your diet. In those specific cases, your kidneys may not be able to filter excess potassium, which can be dangerous. But for the vast majority of people with normal kidney function, getting more potassium from food is one of the safest ways to lower blood pressure. Let's take a moment for a quick check-in. I want to know where you stand on this. Comment your age below and let me know. Have you been told to cut salt? And did your doctor ever mention adding potassium? It is surprisingly rare for potassium to be mentioned in the exam room, yet it is half of the equation. Think of your blood vessels like a muscle. If you make a fist and squeeze tight, that is your vessel on high sodium and low potassium. To open your hand and relax the muscles, you need potassium. If you don't have it, the hand stays clenched. That is exactly what is happening inside your chest. Another excellent source of potassium that is often overlooked is tomato paste. Just make sure you buy the kind with no added salt or sugar. You can add a spoonful to stews or soups. It is a concentrated source of nutrients that supports the arterial lining. By focusing on adding these foods, you naturally crowd out the processed foods that are high in salt and sugar. It is a positive addition rather than a negative restriction. Elaine found that she enjoyed her food much more when she added avocado and spinach than when she was just eating plain steamed vegetables. So, the second step in our sequence is to actively load your diet with potassium-rich foods to balance the sodium equation. 3. The morning protocol. We have discussed the internal chemistry, now we must discuss the data. You cannot fix what you cannot measure accurately. This brings us to the third item, which is specifically about how you measure your blood pressure. This sounds simple, but I would estimate that over 80% of the seniors I see are measuring their blood pressure incorrectly. This leads to unnecessary worry, unnecessary medication increases, and a complete misunderstanding of what is actually working. There is a phenomenon known as white coat syndrome, where your blood pressure spikes simply because you are in a doctor's office. You are nervous, you drove in traffic to get there, you sat in a waiting room, and then a nurse rushed you into a room and slapped a cuff on your arm immediately. Of course it is high. Let me tell you about Arthur. Arthur was 75, a retired teacher. He came to me for a second opinion because his primary care physician wanted to put him on a third medication. His readings in the office were consistently 170 over 100. That is dangerously high. Arthur told me, "Dr. Harris, I don't feel like my pressure is that high at home. I feel fine." I asked Arthur to bring in his home monitor so we could check it against mine, but more importantly, I asked him to show me exactly how he measures his pressure at home. Arthur sat down, rolled up his sleeve, crossed his legs, started chatting with me about the weather, and hit the button on the machine while holding his arm up in the air. Every single thing he did was wrong. Because of his technique, his machine was giving him error messages or erratic readings, which made him trust the doctor's high readings more. We spent the entire session just training him on the morning protocol. I sent him home with strict instructions to measure twice a day for a week using the correct method. When he returned, his average home reading was 138/85, still slightly elevated, but nowhere near the crisis levels seen in the office. He did not need that third medication, he just needed accurate data. Here is the exact protocol you must follow. This is non-negotiable if you want to know the truth about your arteries. First, timing matters. You should measure in the morning, but not the very second you wake up. Your blood pressure has a natural rhythm. It rises when you wake up to help you get out of bed. Wait about 30 minutes to an hour after waking. Do this before you have your coffee and before you exercise. Second, the quiet sit. You must sit in a chair with a back. Do not sit on the edge of a bed or a soft couch where your core has to work to keep you upright. Your back must be supported. Your feet must be flat on the floor, never crossed. Crossing your legs can raise the systolic top number by 2 to 8 points. You must sit there in silence for fully 5 minutes before you even put the cuff on. This allows your body to return to a resting baseline. Arthur was measuring immediately after walking up the stairs. Third, the arm position. Your arm should be resting on a table so that the cuff is at the same level as your heart. If your arm is dangling at your side, the reading will be too high. If you are holding your arm up, the reading will be affected by muscle tension. It must be supported by a surface. Fourth, the cuff size. If the cuff is too small, it will give a falsely high reading. If you have larger arms, you need a large adult cuff. If the Velcro pops open or feels incredibly tight before it even inflates, you need a bigger size. Fifth, and this is the hardest one for many, silence. Do not talk while the machine is running. Talking raises your blood pressure. Do not watch the news. Do not check your phone. Just breathe. Arthur followed this routine religiously. He discovered that his spikes were actually just user error. Once he had reliable data, we could actually see if the diet changes were working. Before that, it was all guessing. There is another element to this protocol, the rule of 3. When you sit down to measure, take 3 readings, 1 minute apart. Ignore the first one. The first reading is almost always high because of the anxiety of measurement. Take the average of the second and third readings. That is your true number. This protocol gives you control. It removes the fear of the doctor's visit because you know your true numbers. You can walk into your appointment and say, I know it is high today because I am nervous, but here is my log of resting readings from the last 2 weeks. A good doctor will respect that data. If you are not doing this, you are flying blind. You might be taking medication you don't need, or you might be under-medicated because you caught a good reading by accident. Precision is key. 4. The fructose factor. We return to the food supply for our 4th item. This connects back to the sugar debate, but it is a specific type of sugar that is often protected by a health halo. We are talking about fructose, specifically in the form of fruit juice and high fructose corn syrup. Many seniors grew up with the idea that a glass of orange juice in the morning is the pinnacle of health. It's vitamin C, right? The reality for your blood pressure is much more complicated. Fructose is metabolized differently than glucose. It is processed almost entirely in the liver. When you consume a large load of liquid fructose, like a glass of juice or a large soda, it creates a byproduct in the liver called uric acid. For a long time, we thought uric acid only mattered for gout. If you had gout, you watched your uric acid. If you didn't, you ignored it. But we now know that uric acid has a direct effect on your blood vessels. It inhibits the production of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a gas produced by your arteries that signals them to relax and widen. It is the body's natural blood pressure medication. When uric acid is high, nitric oxide is low. When nitric oxide is low, arteries stiffen and pressure rises. Let's talk about Margaret. Margaret was 65. She was not overweight, she didn't smoke, and she walked every day, but her blood pressure was creeping up, and she had nagging joint pain in her hands. Margaret started every single day with 16 ounces of fresh squeezed orange juice. She thought she was doing the best thing possible for her immune system. I explained to Margaret that while the orange itself is healthy, the juice is a concentrated fructose bomb. By removing the fiber, she was allowing that sugar to hit her liver instantly. This was spiking her uric acid, which was likely contributing to both her joint pain and her blood pressure. The fix was simple but required a change in habit. We didn't ban fruit, we banned juice. I told her, "Margaret, eat the orange, do not drink it. When you eat the whole fruit, the fiber slows down the absorption of the fructose. The liver is not overwhelmed. The uric acid spike does not happen." We also looked at her pantry. High fructose corn syrup is in everything: bread, ketchup, salad dressing, barbecue sauce. This industrial sweetener is a major driver of uric acid. Margaret swapped her morning juice for a glass of water and a whole orange. She started reading labels and threw out the barbecue sauce that listed high fructose corn syrup as the first ingredient. Her joint pain improved within 10 days. Her blood pressure, which had been resistant to other changes, finally started to drift down. This is why the salt versus sugar title of this video is so important. Margaret wasn't eating much salt, but she was drinking a health food that was chemically preventing her arteries from dilating. The rule here is simple: do not drink your sugar, whether it is soda, sweet tea, or even 100% fruit juice. The delivery speed matters. Recent studies have shown a strong correlation between elevated uric acid levels and the development of hypertension. By lowering the fructose load, you lower the uric acid, and you allow your nitric oxide to do its job. This is particularly important for seniors because our natural production of nitric oxide declines with age anyway. We produce about half as much at age 60 as we did at age 20. We cannot afford to inhibit what little we have left with a glass of juice. If you crave that citrus flavor in the morning, try squeezing just a wedge of lemon or lime into warm water. You get the flavor and the vitamin C without the massive fructose load. So, item number 4 is to eliminate liquid fructose to protect your nitric oxide levels. We have covered the insulin driver, the potassium balance, the measurement protocol, and the fructose danger. We are building a foundation here. But there are more levers to pull. There is a specific way to move your body that flushes sugar immediately. There is a connection between your sleep and your morning numbers that most people miss. And there is a specific order to eating your food that acts like a shield for your arteries. You need the complete picture to fully regain control. 5. The nitric oxide walk. We have talked about what goes into your mouth, but now we must talk about what you do with your muscles immediately after you swallow. This is the single most effective same-day lever you can pull to lower your blood pressure and stabilize your blood sugar simultaneously. It involves a specific type of movement that triggers the release of that miracle gas I mentioned earlier, nitric oxide. Many seniors fall into a very common trap. They eat a healthy dinner, perhaps around 6 o'clock, and then they move to the recliner to watch the evening news or read a book. They stay there for 3 or 4 hours until bedtime. The problem is that when you sit still after a meal, the glucose from your food stays in your bloodstream. Your pancreas has to pump out massive amounts of insulin to shove that sugar into your muscles. And as we learned in step 1, high insulin means your kidneys hold onto salt and your blood pressure rises. Let me introduce you to James. James was 70 years old, a retired accountant who loved his routine. He was not inactive. He played golf twice a week and did yard work on weekends, but his evening routine was sedentary. He would eat a large dinner, meat, potatoes, bread, and then sit. James came to me because his evening blood pressure readings were frighteningly high. His morning numbers were okay, but by 8 p.m. he was often sitting at 160/95. He felt flushed and uncomfortable. "I don't understand," James said. "I'm relaxing. I'm sitting in my chair. Why is my pressure going up?" I explained to James that relaxing his muscles was actually the problem. His body was flooded with post-meal blood sugar, and because his muscles were dormant, that sugar had nowhere to go. His system was under metabolic stress. We prescribed a very simple rule for James, the 10-minute rule. I told him, "James, the moment you put down your fork, you must put on your shoes." I did not ask him to run a marathon. I did not even ask him to power walk. I simply asked him to walk at a casual, conversational pace for 10 minutes immediately after breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Why does this work? When you contract your large leg muscles, the quadriceps and the calves, while walking, a remarkable thing happens. Your muscles become like sponges for sugar. They absorb glucose from the bloodstream without needing as much insulin. It is a non-insulin dependent pathway. By walking for just 10 minutes, James was burning off the sugar spike before it could trigger the insulin flood. Lower sugar means lower insulin. Lower insulin means the kidneys release fluid. But there is a second benefit. The rhythmic motion of walking creates shear stress against the walls of your arteries. This sounds bad, but it is actually good. The flowing blood gently rubs against the endothelial lining, stimulating it to produce nitric oxide. So, by walking, James was naturally dilating his arteries at the exact moment they would usually be stiffening. James started this routine. He walked around his block after dinner. If the weather was bad, he marched in place in his living room or walked up and down his hallway while listening to a podcast. The results were immediate. I mean, literally the same day. The first night he did it, his 8 p.m. reading dropped by 12 points. He called me a week later ecstatic. "It feels like magic," he said. "I feel lighter and my numbers are down." This is a tool you can use anywhere. You do not need a gym membership. You do not need special equipment. You just need to move. For older adults, this is also safer than heavy exercise. It is gentle on the joints, it aids digestion, and it clears the mind. If you have mobility issues that prevent walking, you can still use this principle. You can do seated marching, where you lift your knees while sitting in a chair. You can do calf raises while holding onto a counter. Any rhythmic movement of the large leg muscles will help clear the glucose and release the gas. However, a safety note: if you experience chest pain, severe shortness of breath, or dizziness while walking, stop immediately and sit down. If the symptoms persist, seek medical attention. But for most people, a gentle stroll is perfectly safe and incredibly effective. So, step number 5 is to institute the 10-minute walk after every meal to flatten the glucose curve and open the arteries. 6. The cortisol sleep cycle. We move now from your evening activity to your night's rest. You might think that while you are asleep, your blood pressure is not your problem, but the quality of your sleep dictates your blood pressure for the entire next day. Thomas felt trapped. He came to see me, and I could see he was gripping the armrests of the chair, his knuckles white. I didn't put the cuff on him. I said, "Thomas, we aren't going to measure yet. We are going to breathe." I taught him the pattern. Inhale quietly through the nose for a count of 4. Hold the breath for a count of 7. Exhale forcefully through the mouth, making a whoosh sound for a count of 8. This long exhale is the secret key. When you exhale longer than you inhale, you are physically stimulating the vagus nerve. This nerve runs from your brain down to your heart and gut. When stimulated, it sends a powerful signal to your heart. Slow down, we are safe. There is no tiger chasing us. It switches off the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, and switches on the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. Thomas and I did this together for 3 minutes, just sitting there, breathing. I watched his shoulders drop. I saw his hands relax on the armrests. The color returned to his face. Then, without making a big deal of it, I put the cuff on and pressed the button. 150/90. Still a little elevated, but 30 points lower than his usual panic number. He was stunned. "I didn't take a pill," he said. "No," I replied. "You took control of your own biology." Thomas now uses this invisible pill everywhere. He does it in the car if traffic is bad. He does it in the waiting room. He does it before bed to help him fall asleep. This is the most powerful tool you have because it is always with you. It is free, and it works instantly. Most older adults can try this safely anywhere. However, if you feel lightheaded when holding your breath, just shorten the counts. Try breathing in for 3 and out for 6. The ratio matters more than the specific seconds. The out-breath must be longer than the in-breath. This supports immediate stress reduction and prevents temporary spikes from becoming permanent problems. So, let's look at the full picture we have built today. We didn't just talk about eating better. We built a strategic protocol. We used beets to widen the vessels with nitric oxide. We used hibiscus to inhibit the enzymes that constrict them. We fixed your measurement technique so you aren't chasing false numbers. We used garlic to polish the arteries and improve flow. We used fatty fish to stabilize the heart's electrical rhythm. We used magnesium greens to relax the muscle tension. And we used deep breathing as your emergency brake for stress. This is a comprehensive approach that treats your body as a whole system, not just a broken machine. If you start incorporating even one or two of these changes, you are moving in the right direction. Start with the one that seems easiest to you. Maybe it's the tea, maybe it's the breathing. Master that, then add another. Small hinges swing big doors, and small changes in your daily routine can open the door to a longer, healthier, and calmer life. 8. The sodium antidote. We are constantly told to cut salt. Low sodium is stamped on every heart-healthy product in the grocery store, but cutting salt is only half the battle. Imagine your cells are like a nightclub. Sodium is the bouncer trying to get in and cause trouble, making the club crowded and chaotic, which raises the pressure. Potassium is the security guard that escorts the sodium out the back door. If you have too much sodium and not enough potassium, the sodium stays trapped inside your cells, holding on to water and keeping your blood pressure sky high. You cannot just stop eating salt. You must actively eat potassium to flush the system. Let me tell you about Samuel. Samuel was 74, and he was the most disciplined patient I had ever seen regarding salt. He never used the shaker. He bought unsalted butter. He read every label. But his blood pressure was still hovering around 150/90, and he was frustrated to the point of tears. "Dr. Ben," he said, "I am eating cardboard. Why isn't it working?" I looked at his diet log. It was full of low-sodium bread, low-sodium crackers, and plain rice. It was low in salt, yes, but it was basically dead food. It had almost zero potassium. His body was desperately holding on to whatever tiny amount of sodium he ate because there was no potassium to trigger the exchange. We didn't cut anything else from his diet. Instead, we added one specific food, the avocado. Now, Samuel thought avocados were just for young hipsters, but I explained that half an avocado has more potassium than a banana without the sugar spike that can be dangerous for seniors with prediabetes. I asked him to eat half an avocado with his lunch every single day. If he couldn't find a ripe one, we substituted it with a baked sweet potato, another potassium giant, twice a week. The change was physiological and rapid. Within 10 days, Samuel noticed he was using the bathroom more frequently. This was his kidneys finally waking up and flushing out the excess fluid and sodium that had been trapped in his tissues for years. His ankles, which were usually a little puffy by 5 p.m., were slim. And his blood pressure? It dropped to 132/82. He hadn't removed any more salt. He had simply balanced the equation. Potassium relaxes the walls of the blood vessels and lowers blood pressure by protecting against muscle cramping. However, a very serious safety note here. If you are on certain medication for blood pressure, specifically ACE inhibitors or diuretics that are potassium sparing, or if you have advanced kidney disease, you must talk to your doctor before loading up on potassium. Your kidneys need to be healthy enough to handle the load. But for the average senior with normal kidney function, potassium is the missing link that makes a low-salt diet actually work. It supports the body's natural fluid balance and prevents that bloated, high-pressure feeling. Now, let's look at the structure of the vessels themselves. 9. The vessel repairman. Think of your arteries like the tires on your car. Over time, rubber tires get dry, brittle, and they can crack. Your arteries are lined with collagen, and as we age, that collagen breaks down, making the arteries stiff and prone to microscopic tears. When the body sees a tear, it patches it with cholesterol, plaque. So, to stop the plaque, we need to stop the tearing. We need to keep the collagen strong. The absolute essential fuel for collagen production is vitamin C. I am not talking about a supplement. I am talking about bell peppers and citrus. Let's talk about Maria. Maria was 71 and she bruised like a peach. If she bumped into the coffee table, she would have a purple mark for weeks. She also had high blood pressure, around 155/95. These two things, the bruising and the blood pressure, were connected. Her blood vessels were fragile. They lacked structural integrity because she wasn't eating enough raw vitamin C. She drank pasteurized orange juice, but the pasteurization process destroys a lot of the delicate vitamin C and leaves behind a sugar bomb that spiked her glucose. We needed a source that was low in sugar but high in repair power. I prescribed her the red pepper snack. Red bell peppers have 3 times more vitamin C than an orange. I asked Maria to slice up half a raw red bell pepper and eat it as a snack in the afternoon, maybe with a little hummus. She also started squeezing fresh lemon juice into her water, not from a plastic bottle, but from a real lemon. This provided the raw materials her body needed to knit her collagen back together. After 2 months, the changes were visible. First, the bruising on her arms started to fade and didn't return as easily. This was a sign that her capillaries were stronger. Internally, her larger arteries were becoming more elastic. Her blood pressure readings started to soften, coming down to the low 140s. It wasn't a drastic overnight drop, but it was a steady, structural improvement. Her doctor was pleased because her gums also stopped bleeding when she brushed her teeth, another sign of collagen repair. Most seniors boil their vegetables until they are soft, which destroys the vitamin C. You need to have some crunch in your diet. Raw peppers, raw strawberries, or fresh citrus juice added after cooking are the keys. This supports the physical strength of your cardiovascular system, ensuring the pipes don't leak or crack under pressure. Here is another comment prompt for you. I want to know your preference on this one. Comment sweet if you like red peppers, or sour if you prefer lemons and citrus. It helps me understand what flavors you enjoy so I can tailor these tips. Now, we have to address the elephant in the room that connects 2 major health issues. 10. The sugar pressure link. We often treat blood pressure and blood sugar as 2 different departments. You see a cardiologist for one and an endocrinologist for the other, but in your body, they are the same system. High blood sugar makes your blood sticky, like syrup. Pumping syrup is much harder than pumping water. It forces the heart to strain, raising your blood pressure. If you have borderline sugar issues, or if you are pre-diabetic, your blood pressure will never be truly controlled until you control the insulin. The food weapon for this is soluble fiber, specifically from oats or beans. Let me introduce you to Franklin. Franklin was 76, and he was a meat and bread guy. He had high blood pressure, 160/90, and his doctor told him his fasting blood sugar was creeping up to 115. He wasn't diabetic yet, but he was knocking on the door. Franklin didn't eat sweets, but he ate white toast, instant mashed potatoes, and white rice. These are fast-digesting carbs that spike insulin. Insulin causes your kidneys to hoard sodium, so the high sugar was causing the high salt retention, which caused the high pressure. It is a domino effect. We had to break the chain. We swapped his morning white toast for a bowl of old-fashioned rolled oats, not the instant kind with sugar packets, but the slow-cooking kind. We added walnuts and cinnamon. The soluble fiber in oats, called beta-glucan, forms a gel in the gut. This gel slows down the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream. Because the sugar hit the blood slower, his insulin didn't spike. Because his insulin didn't spike, his kidneys were able to release sodium. It took about 3 weeks. Franklin came in with his logbook. "Dr. Ben," he pointed to the page, "look at the morning numbers." His fasting blood sugar had dropped to 98, and miraculously, his blood pressure had followed it down to 138/85. He hadn't taken a new blood pressure pill. He had simply lowered the viscosity of his blood by managing his sugar. For seniors, this is arguably the most important connection to understand. If you are fighting stubborn blood pressure that won't go down no matter how many pills you take, check your sugar. Are you eating enough fiber to sponge up that glucose? A recent study confirmed that increasing dietary fiber intake is inversely associated with blood pressure levels in older adults. meaning more fiber equals less pressure. If you don't like oatmeal, beans and lentils are fantastic alternatives. Just half a cup of beans in your soup can provide that gel-forming fiber. However, if you are not used to fiber, start slow. If you go from zero to a huge bowl of beans, you will get gas and bloating. Start with a few spoonfuls and let your gut adjust over a week. This supports metabolic health, which is the foundation of vascular health. Now, let's move to something that isn't food, but it is something you consume every day, and most seniors are doing it wrong. 11. The hydration factor. As we age, our thirst mechanism breaks down. The signal from your brain that says, "I am thirsty," gets weaker. By the time you actually feel thirsty, you are already dehydrated. When you are dehydrated, your blood volume drops, but your body panics. To keep blood flowing to your brain, your blood vessels constrict tightly to maintain pressure. Also, the blood becomes thicker and harder to pump. This leads to a paradoxical situation where dehydration causes high blood pressure. We need to talk about mineralized water. Let's talk about Eleanor. Eleanor was 80 years old and she lived in a warm climate. She was very proud of the fact that she didn't drink soda, she only drank water, but she drank distilled water because she was afraid of tap water contaminants. She was drinking empty water, no minerals. She was constantly dizzy when she stood up, hypotension, but had high pressure when she sat down, hypertension. Her system was chaotic. She was also running to the bathroom every 20 minutes because the water was running right through her. I explained to Eleanor that water needs minerals, electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and magnesium, to actually stay inside the cells. Distilled water can actually leach minerals out of your body. We made a simple change. I didn't ask her to buy expensive sports drinks, which are full of sugar and dyes. I asked her to take her filtered water and add a tiny pinch of high-quality sea salt, like Celtic or Himalayan, and a squeeze of lemon to every glass. Just a few grains of salt, not enough to taste salty. This turned her water into an electrolyte solution. Suddenly, she wasn't running to the bathroom constantly. Her body was absorbing the hydration. Her blood volume stabilized. The dizziness upon standing disappeared because her blood volume was healthy enough to fight gravity. And her resting blood pressure stabilized because her vessels didn't have to clamp down in panic mode to keep the blood moving. She felt more alert. Her skin looked less creepy, and her energy levels soared. For seniors, the rule of thumb is to drink half your body weight in ounces of water, but you have to sip it, not chug it. If you drink a huge glass all at once, you will just trigger a bathroom trip. Sip slowly throughout the day. And watch out for tea and coffee. They are diuretics, meaning they push water out. For every cup of coffee, you need an extra glass of water to break even. This supports a stable blood volume and prevents the panic constriction of dehydration. Now, there is one final piece of the puzzle. It acts like a hormone in the body, and it dictates how your kidneys handle pressure. 12. The hormonal anchor. This is technically a vitamin, but it acts like a steroid hormone. We are talking about vitamin D and sunlight. There is a system in your body called the renin-angiotensin system. It is a mouthful, but it is the master control switch for blood pressure. When this system is overactive, your blood pressure stays high. Vitamin D is the chemical key that turns the system down. It suppresses the enzyme renin. Most seniors are chronically deficient in vitamin D because we spend more time indoors, and aging skin is less efficient at converting sunlight into the vitamin. Let me share the story of Albert. Albert was 75 and he was a night owl. He watched old movies late at night and slept until noon. He rarely saw the sun. His blood pressure was difficult to control, and he also suffered from vague muscle aches and the blues. We tested his vitamin D levels, and they were in the basement, single digits. I told Albert his body was literally in a dark winter mode, hoarding resources and keeping pressure high for survival. We couldn't just rely on food for this, although fatty fish and egg yolks help. We needed the sun. I gave Albert a prescription, the morning walk. He had to get up by 9 a.m. and sit on his porch or walk for 15 minutes with his sleeves rolled up, exposing his arms and face to the light. We also added a vitamin D3 supplement with K2 to ensure the calcium went to his bones, not his arteries. It took about 3 months to correct the deficiency, but the transformation was profound. His mood lifted significantly. He wasn't grumpy in the mornings anymore. His muscle aches vanished. And his doctor was able to drop one of his 3 blood pressure medications because his baseline numbers had drifted down by 10 points. The sun had signaled to his renin system that it was okay to relax. If you live in a northern climate or can't get outside, a supplement is almost mandatory for seniors. But ask your doctor for a blood test first. You want to know your numbers so you can dose correctly. Don't guess with hormones. This supports the chemical signaling that dictates your baseline pressure. So let's look at the complete picture we have created together across this entire journey. We started with the heavy hitters, beets for nitric oxide and hibiscus for enzyme inhibition. We fixed your measurement so you aren't scaring yourself with false readings. We added garlic to smooth the flow and fatty fish to calm the heart's rhythm. We used magnesium greens to stop the cramping. We learned to breathe to stop the stress spikes. Then we went deeper. We balanced the salt with avocado and potassium. We repaired the vessel walls with vitamin C from peppers. We managed the sugar pressure link with fiber from oats. We fixed your hydration with minerals. And we anchored the whole system with vitamin D. This is not a list of 12 chores. This is a menu of opportunities. You do not have to do all 12 starting tomorrow. That would be overwhelming, and stress is the enemy of blood pressure. Pick one from the first section, maybe the beets. Pick one from this section, maybe the hydration. Master those 2. See how you feel. Then add another. Health is not a sprint. It is a marathon, and you are in training for the rest of your life. Remember, your body is incredibly forgiving. It wants to heal. It wants to have normal pressure. You just have to give it the right tools to do the job. If you found this deep dive helpful, please share it with a friend or a spouse who needs to hear it. We are building a community of seniors who are taking control, one meal at a time, and make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss our next guide on senior vitality. I'm Dr. Ben Harris. Here is to your health, your heart, and your peace of mind. I'll see you soon.